So I'm not like a big phone person, right? Like outside of the 12 Pro Max, I've always gone for like the smaller screen size, but I've been using the Pixel 8 Pro for a few weeks now, and it's been making me reconsider that stance for the future. Starting with the design, it looks a lot like the Pixel 7, which I really liked. But they made a couple small improvements just so it's a little more comfortable to hold. There's just generally bigger radii on the corners and on the edges. Like for a big phone, this helps it feel a lot smaller and a bit easier to use one-handed. Also, the back has a new matte finish, which granted has a little bit less grip than the glossy glass, but it does look really good, especially with this new bay blue color. I do miss the matte rails from the Pixel 7. It looks better, and I feel like it just didn't scratch as easily, especially on the camera bar. I see a few little scratches starting to form from just putting the phone down over time. Speaking of the cameras though, a lot like the other Pixels that I've used, I really like what I'm getting out of the 8 Pro. So the main camera is still a 50 megapixel sensor that can take full res raw photos for some more flexibility in post, along with a 2x zoom by cropping into the center of the sensor. The telephoto is still a 48 megapixel sensor that's equivalent to a 5x optical zoom, and the ultra wide was bumped up to a 48 megapixel sensor. All three cameras also have a wider aperture, which will help get a lot more light into the sensor when it gets darker. And coming from the standard Pixel 7, I didn't have that 5x telephoto before, and it's actually come in handy a few times. I prefer it over just the 3x on the iPhone, since having that little bit of extra reach always helps. Also, there's a 10.5 megapixel selfie camera that has a slightly wider field of view than before, and also it now includes autofocus. It's really impressive how far Google can take computational photography to help you get a really good exposure, but I did find that there's some noticeable grain and artifacting in the shadows of darker scenes. Also, what's really cool is a lot of pro options in the camera app, from just shooting the 50 megapixel raw photos to having full manual control over all the settings while you shoot. Although I did find that if you want to take raw photos at the full resolution, one, it takes a JPEG and a RAW, so you have both options, but two, it also takes a while to process. Like when you hit the shutter button, there is a distinct lag between when you do that and you actually take the photo, which is perfectly fine if you're just taking a photo of, you know, a scene or landscape or something that's still, but it could cause problems for things that are moving fast, like pets, cars, things like that. But I think my favorite feature is focus peaking, like especially for shooting macro, which I really enjoyed doing on the iPhone, but the larger sensor combined with the peaking on the 8 Pro really helps get a crisp image and exactly what you want is in focus. Overall, the photos look really good, right? And there's like a nice natural depth to the stuff that you take on the wide camera. The colors are good, and I like the amount of contrast in the photos without it feeling too over-processed. And right next to the cameras is this really interesting feature. Google decided to put a temperature sensor right underneath the flash. I don't fully understand why this is here. Like, I could see if you want to check your temperature when you're sick, but it isn't rated for that. Granted, it is fun to just mess around and take random temperatures, but I couldn't really find a legitimate use case for this. I do like though how the app shows you on the screen where the sensor is on the other side, but moving on to something that is actually really useful is the new Super Actua Display. It's a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED, so it can refresh anywhere from 1 to 120 Hertz, which gives you a smooth experience when you need it, but it also helps you preserve power when you don't. And this gets really bright. It's 1600 nits for HDR with a peak brightness of 2400 nits out in the sun. This is probably one of the only phones that I can see outside just as well as I can see it inside. Like side by side with the 15 Pro Max brightness, there's just so much more room. Like the 8 Pro can run at a relatively lower brightness in the same lighting conditions. But this is one of the biggest phones that I've ever used, and I've been really worried about dropping it. So when Caseboard reached out and offered to send me one of their cases, I was looking forward to trying it out. This is their clear case with MagSafe compatibility. It uses a hybrid design with a TPU bumper and a polycarbonate backplate. It was designed and built to last while also staying clear without any yellowing. I've dropped this from about 6 feet with no problems. Personally, I'm not a fan, but Caseboard also sends you screen and camera protectors if you need some extra security. Also, one of my favorite features is the MagSafe compatibility, so I can use my Pixel and my iPhone with the same set of accessories. If you want to grab one for yourself, check out Caseboard at the link down below the like button and use my code to get 10% off your order. And underneath the display is the same optical fingerprint sensor as the Pixel 7, which I haven't noticed to be any more or less reliable. I ended up going back and just re-adding my fingerprints, which did help a bit, but I generally just use Face Unlock. Unless I'm wearing sunglasses or there isn't enough light, the ultra-wide camera picks up my face and my phone's unlocked by the time I'm even fully looking at the screen. You know, if you want to do something on your phone, right, and you pick it up and it's already unlocked, ready to go, it makes that whole interaction just feel more natural, as opposed to having to authenticate, unlock, and then get started with whatever you're intending to do. And if it doesn't pick up your face, you can just use a fingerprint sensor at pretty much the same time, so it'll unlock using one of the two. Also, despite using just the front-facing 2D camera, this qualifies as a Class 3 biometric, which is great, so it can authenticate in other apps and not just unlock your phone. And all of this is powered by a mix of machine learning and the new Tensor G3, which is a new 4nm chip designed to bring AI to this phone. G3 was built to be a more efficient architecture, so I haven't really noticed it get as warm as the 7. For normal everyday use though, it's smooth and works really well. But I think a new normal use case for this phone also includes AI on a pretty regular basis, right? And Tensor G3 enables this with a lot of cool features. For voice, they added more natural language understanding, so you can have pauses and ums and just talk how you normally would and not like you're talking to a computer. Personally, I really like the Recorder app for this. It does a really good job of identifying speakers, putting in punctuation, and doing it pretty much immediately. I'll be in Vegas for CES in a few weeks, and I'm definitely planning on using this to help me keep track of all the information that I'll be getting and where it's coming from. The camera also got some really cool enhancements, like Magic Eraser now uses generative AI to help you get rid of larger pieces of your photo and even move subjects around in the frame. I tried this out on some photos from my trip to New York recently, and I was really impressed. I had this cool photo of one of the bridges, but there were a lot of people in the foreground. Magic Eraser was able to just clean that up and replace it with a sidewalk, which is really interesting to think about. This isn't the photo that I actually took, but it is a photo that conveys what I wanted to take, if that makes sense. There's also Video Boost, which uploads your video to Google's data center so it can run it through a computational model that adjusts color, stabilization, gain, and lighting. And it does go frame by frame for this, which is the opposite of a quick process. So the Pixel gives you the original version to share immediately, while the uploaded version is processed and you get a notification within a few hours. But honestly, I think it's worth the time. You get a really good result and it brings out a surprising amount of detail in the shadows. There's just so much more going on that wasn't in the original shot. Google integrated AI into the 8 Pro really well, with features that help with more natural interaction, better photos after the fact, and just higher quality video. All of that combined with some upgraded hardware for the cameras and the new Super Actua Display makes for a really good phone for someone who just wants a solid Android experience with some enhancements from AI without it feeling like there's too much of it. But thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos about tech, cameras, and making. Here's a video about the M3 MacBook Pro, and here's a video that YouTube thinks you're gonna like the best.